Nightlife in the early 80s to the 90s embodied what it meant to push the boundaries of art and involvement in social politics. Club life is found in the roots of experimental changes in music, diversified fashion as a whole, and it gave home to cross-culturalism safe spaces. Thanks to club life, people had a place to be heard, a place to be seen. Maria Raposo, blog writer for Kids of Dada, explored the talented work living among the city nightlife, making point that, quote, there was more to clubbing than dressing up and popping pills. It was a genuine community coming together to express their artistic flair in ways that was purposely alienated from the mainstream. To the limelight, club life can be appreciated for the artistry and social diversions it brought. As a movement, the boom of the club scene gave queer club kids a place to express their voices, bring physical forms to their creativity, and a place to find community, forever impacting the world of arts, approach to sexuality, and political activism. The 70s are reaching an end. The post-disco world of New York City and the punk subcultures of London are starting to transition toward what we now call club culture. The birth of disco took place in communities of varying people of color, cultures, and identities. But with time, the community had become more and more divided. The spreading attacks from one side led to the creation of disco clubs, such as the Warehouse, specifically for POC and queer clubbers to have their own safe space from the oncoming epidemic of hate towards the original disco creators. As POC and queer partiers of disco regained their spot to dance and club, social separation from the era of disco became the standard. The white clubbers no longer wanted to be associated with the field of dance and music that had been reclaimed by black and queer communities. This hatred in its own ways influenced the later sound of disco music, shifting the funk towards more electronic and intense sounds that we commonly hear throughout the goth era and post-punk. Media including the Blitz and other fashion-based magazines of the 80s taken note of how this new cultural wave was blending alternative crowds and shifting the styles of club music as a whole, and it's now creating safe spots for queer gatherings. All of this was plenty of a reason to draw in now iconic kids to the club scene. Staple names from the prime era of club culture continue to hold relevancy today. RuPaul, Suzanne Barsh, Michael League, Amanda Lepore, Lady Bunny, etc. While these legends, excluding the monster that is Michael League, are key figures in club history, one name sticks out the most, and that is Leigh Bowery. Leigh Bowery was a drag performance artist who had forever set the stage for artsy, eccentric queers globally. His freakish designs and shows were works of art in their own that forever changed the approach to haute couture. Bowery's work influenced later fashion artists such as Alexander McQueen and pop sensations like Lady Gaga and Bjork. His active creations of disturbing the mind and twisting social ideals allowed others to feel comfortable in their own creations and art. The work of Leigh Bowery was enough to make the statement that he, quote, was not just a clubber, but one of many who made an impactful start to the avant-garde looks on the dance floor. By the mid to late 80s, change in performance styles, music, and fashion extremes were challenged and toyed with more than ever in the underground nightlife. Queer nightclubs continue to flourish in expressionistic changes, though still heavily filled with explicit and recreational activities. The club kids were visually revolutionizing their former queer aesthetics. In episode 9, season 9 of RuPaul's Drag Race, drag artist Sasha Velour sparked conversation about club kids and culture, making point of how fashion and political movements of club life, quote, didn't just shift drag, it shifted fashion. This shining light on the movement of nightlife as a whole and what it had really become, using fashion, makeup, music, etc. to create community around being/designing artwork beyond something never seen before. Club couture was boundary-breaking in itself. Club fashion and performance pieces played a large role in spreading political statements. Being the late 80s, queer people struggled to find a voice for their concern and disapproval of the political injustices that they were facing. Even within a sense of community, interspatial divide was prevalent. Clubbers would discriminate against other LGBT members for being POC or given the outbreak of the time being HIV positive. A pedestal was put in place, shaping the common club crowd into something where a body marked with AIDS or the visible effects of its medication were sometimes shunned due to the certain beauty standards. Stigmatization crept its way back onto the dance floor, radicalizing queer club culture from what it once was. The need to fit in and be seen as something above what they once were created an ego-driven divide within the queer community. The nightlife that was built on breaking barriers was now floating towards the mainstream, making an apparent sight of, quote, the heterosexualization of gay culture. The HIV crisis of the time would too forever change iconic club culture. Older generations of former club kids were lost. Heteronormativity spread throughout the younger, more vulnerable, and insecure queer crowds. This younger generation chose to live in denial and turned a blind eye to the active epidemic. Mainstream parasite led to the body-positive tea dance, an accepting place for people who were affected by AIDS. Little steps like the body-positive tea dance glacially made improvements for bringing queer club life back together. clubs and clubgoers eventually, very slowly, but eventually steered back on track to becoming more inclusive. Even then, it wasn't until the mid-2000s, with the introduction of social media, that Simon Wu, writer for The Drift, was able to, quote, see representations of queer POC having a good time, laughing, dancing, kissing one another, quote, inspiring him to feel less alone. Intercommunal divides, simultaneous with external pushbacks, took creative toll on club life. While the original alien-esque club scene will be hard to revive, many queer clubbers, fashion, and drag artists today are finding the importance in learning nightlife history and the roots of their work. Though, quote, queerness itself did not always guarantee status or even belonging, end quote, the desire to belong brought people together to celebrate uniqueness and talent. Navigating importance in the queer community seemed impossible for many, but in ways, those divides allowed for creation of more underground work, clubs, and groups with stories of their own.